Hello, my name is Dante Renee, and welcome to the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more. Like tonight's film, 1980's Alien Dead by Fred Olen Ray. 1980's Alien Dead. This is the cover of the DVD put out by Retro Media. I know that a Blu-ray recently was released as well. This is the back of the DVD. And we have some writing and we have a couple shots here that are not incredibly easy to see. Okay. And here it is, folks. This is it right here, Alien Dead 1980. This is the 25th anniversary edition, and this was actually this actually came out in 2004. So the Blu-ray just came out in 2017, I believe, or latter 2016. So let's get into this movie right here by Fred Olen Ray, the director of Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers and many other low-budget films. I believe he even did a good deal of films like Bloody Movie, so on and so forth, and one of my favorites, Scalps. So let's get into this, Alien Dead 1980. What we have here is we have a real southern bayou vibe to this film. I know it was filmed in Florida, and it has that, the palm trees, the southern accents, just kind of like that gator bait vibe. If you've seen the movies Gator Bait 1 and 2, which I will look at on this YouTube page in the future. And it has that kind of that small town vibe, filled with a bunch of different small town characters like the local sheriff, the goofy other police officer under the sheriff who's always cracking like dark humor jokes and inappropriate jokes. It's actually quite funny. We also have some town legends, some town myths. We have a host of we have the small town shops. We have a doctor. And we have just a group of characters in here. We have an old man who lives with his daughter, I believe, and he has his own stories to tell. He can't read, but he's weary of town folk. And we have a reporter who's also come in as well, a journalist of sorts, who we see at the kind of at the start of the film, and researching a phenomenon that's been going on in the film, involving a meteor and the local lake with alligators supposedly in it, and disappearing people in the local town. So this is where Alien Dead comes into play here. It's a wild mashup of the bayou, sci-fi, horror, and zombie film. So let's get into it. Alien Dead 1980. First and foremost, when we look at the music for the film, the music is actually quite awesome. Very, very atmospheric, totally 80s synth driven, but in a very, very macabre manner. Very dark atmosphere, very foreboding, sometimes atonal, experimental, cacophonous. It has some real deep, dark space vibes, something, at times you almost feel like it could have gone very well, especially in the opening credit sequence of 2001 Space Odyssey. At certain sequences, just very dark, very menacing, and at times atonal and a little bit oppressive. And we also have some times where the music, the synth music, gets a little bit jovial, or a little bit with a rhythm, or a little bit of fun in there. But for the most part, it's menacing, and it evokes evil. It evokes an evil atmosphere. When we look at the music in the opening credit sequence, I mean, what a great opening credit sequence. It really kind of brings you in. There's a little bit of movie, and then the title sequence happens. I love when movies do that. And there's some very interesting space footage and different colored circles, and it's very slow, and it's very foreboding in that opening title sequence with the dark atmospheric music. The cinematography, style, locations, I mean, we are predominantly in a palm tree bayou type of vibe, with old shanty shacks and old shanty town stores, and everything looks real mom and pop and looks real legit. In one of the town stores, they got a massive cigarette stand right behind the main counter, which should evoke a lot of memories for people who were around at that time, as opposed to 2017. Now, some really interesting things in this film. Yes, we have black humor. We have a serious low budget vibe to this movie. In the vibe, the atmosphere, the acting, it's just beautiful low budget atmosphere, if you understand what I'm saying here. But with, I would think, with some pretty profoundly dark, horrific sequences in the film that I recalled the movie Scalps that Fred Olen Ray did. I'll be looking at that in the future, I believe, on this YouTube page. But Scalps is a very, very dark and menacing film, and there are sections of that scene in this film, Alien Dead, in the horrific sequences. There's even this amazing slow motion sequence in this film that really took me off guard and allowed the music to just saturate the screen and saturate the whole vibe of what was happening and allowed time to pass in the slow motion oppressive atmosphere. In the horrific sequences, things kind of jump, things kind of sucker punch you, and they're actually quite well done. We do have a lot of blood coming out of mouths. We do have some chomping of some gore in this film. Some stabbings, some, kind of eviscerations and things like that. So there was some gore in here, some great low-budget gore that worked very well. And it's a very interesting mashup between the black humor, low-budget vibe and some sci-fi mythology and stories mixed with, some pretty horrific sequences that work very, very well. In this film, we have, it reminded me at times of a lot of different things. The movie Shockwaves, mixed with Night of the Living Dead. There's a lot of interesting things going on here. And even the way that people disappear and possibly become something else. And could be recognized in the film, even though the characters don't necessarily recognize them. But the viewers of the film could, as people that were once there. Kind of evokes a vibe of, and I'm blanking on the name right now, but of a Dan O'Bannon film that he directed, where people were disappearing and becoming something else. And I'm blanking on the name, but Dan O'Bannon directed it in the early 80s, I believe. And it evoked that vibe as well. Put it in the comments if you remember the movie that I'm talking about, and I'll remember it as soon as I'm done the video, of course. And in terms of the sexuality of the film, of course, it's a very hot film. It's a very sweaty film. At one point, you hear the radio broadcast saying it's about 98 degrees outside. And so we have short shorts on the girls, and we even have a pretty long topless in the water sequence as well, which was really well done, and the girl looked great. And there's a great vibe in the film also of camaraderie and interesting conversations between the characters. I really felt that there were some very interesting conversations, in particular this conversation involving a huge possum, or the alligator, or mythologies about a possum at a dinner table sequence when they're eating possum. And there's some stuff that's really played very, very pitch black humor as well. But this is a movie of characters in the local town, and as the movie develops, things get more and more horrific. And I really enjoyed the vibe, the horrific and fun vibe of the movie, that really did evoke a zombie film mixed with a sci-fi film, mixed with a Bayou type of film. And of course we have different relationships revolving around the cops as opposed to the average folk, as opposed to the old people. There's a shocking sequence in the film involving a woman looking out of a window and then turning her face, in a very, very weird kind of flashback sequence. There's a flashback kind of telling you the origins of the story and of the movie. Alien Dead, the title works well, actually. And we have some great low-budget makeup in this film, makeup effects, a pretty wild sequence where these horrific beings are really coming out of nowhere. In the last 10 minutes of the film, things get batshit crazy. And there's a lot of death, and there's There's even some country music in this film as well, as you'll see from some local bands in the opening credits who did the music. So we have that kind of that dark, menacing score, and we have some country music that even has a bit of a twist, a twist of a country music theme at the closing, at the end of the movie, that kind of was a sucker punch in its own way, and just the vibe that was evoked with the horror. That was kind of weird. But this is Alien Dead, and this is directed by Fred Olen Ray right here. This is a great cover here. I love this cover. I always used to see this cover on Amazon, and this is available pretty cheap, or at least I bought it cheap. And I know the Blu-ray is also out, which is limited edition. I think is signed by Fred Olen Ray as well. So here it is, folks. Alien Dead, 1980. This is only 75 minutes long, and it really has that amazing low-budget horror vibe. Definitely, you feel like you're watching this late at night. And the score has that dark synth that almost reminds me at times of, you know, even just movies like Evils of the Night or Blue Sunshine, things like that. Just really, really, you know, you can never be too low budget with a score, if you understand what I'm saying, when it comes to synth and darkness. And there's just a great sleepover late night vibe to this film. So there it is, folks. Alien Dead. Thank you so much for watching the 10 Room Bizarre YouTube page, where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more, like 1980's Alien Dead. Thank you so much, and good night.